1 month in the White House, and U.S. President Donald Trump is wasting no time reshaping America, from dismantling key Biden-era policies to redefining where the U.S. stands on the world stage. His first month has been anything but quiet. On day one, Mr. Trump signed more than a dozen executive orders, cutting thousands of federal jobs, slashing budgets, and shutting down agencies that he considers wasteful. Immigration, foreign aid, and climate programs were amongst his first targets. Mr. Trump also launching the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, giving Tesla CEO and billionaire Elon Musk the task of cutting federal spending and restructuring agencies. The administration initiated mass layoffs across government departments and is close to shutting down USAID, ending billions in humanitarian aid. It's not just a domestic overhaul. The U.S. president has been extending his crackdown worldwide. He launched a trade war with China, imposing a 10% hike in tariffs on all Chinese goods, which sparked retaliation from Beijing. A 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico was postponed after both addressed U.S. security concerns. However, they've also warned that they will strike back if those tariffs go into effect. Following this tough stance on trade, Mr. Trump's foreign policy is equally bold. He proposed making Canada the 51st state of America, even threatening heavy tariffs, but the northern neighbor has vowed to hit back. In Panama, Mr. Trump's push to take back the canal from Chinese control did yield some concessions, with Panama agreeing to withdraw from China's Belt and Road Initiative. On Gaza, Mr. Trump proposed removing all Palestinians from the besieged enclave and placing it under U.S. control. That's a plan that Israel has backed, but has triggered uproar elsewhere around the world. On Ukraine, as we heard earlier on this bulletin, Mr. Trump's recent phone call with President Vladimir Putin from Russia, paving the way for talks between U.S. and Russian officials. Without Kyiv, this shift has left Ukraine and European allies sidelined, fueling concerns about the future of U.S. support and regional security. How have Americans responded to Mr. Trump's bold moves? A recent Reuters Ipsos poll shows his approval rating dipping to 44%. That's down from 47% after his return to office, while his disapproval rating has climbed to 51%. And from all this, we're joined by Steven Okun. He's CEO of APAC Advisors. Thanks so much for joining us, Mr. Okun. Of the many charges one could level against Mr. Trump, we could not, in all fairness, accuse him of being a man that does not keep to his word. So while we call these upending moves, we have in fact got fair warning from the man himself.
Well, we had fair warning on some, and we didn't have fair warning on others. And I think that's why you see that approval rating dipping. I mean, wow, these 30 days seem like 300 days. So much has happened. And I think from an American perspective, if you're looking at it domestically, the most troubling thing you've seen is how he is dismantling large parts of the U.S. government. And people are realizing now that Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and we can talk about him later, how they are doing things they do not have the authority to do, shutting down agencies, firing people, not spending money that Congress has already allocated. All of those things violate various international laws. And now that Americans see that maybe they're not going to be able to go to the national parks, maybe air traffic won't be as safe as it has been in the past. That's impacting real lives. And that's why you see some pushback domestically. And that is where the strongest actions he's taken so far have been in Europe and in the Americas in particular. A lot of bluster right now. He may very well follow through on it. The tariffs aren't there yet. We don't know what he's going to do with Ukraine yet. We don't know what he's going to do with Gaza yet. We have no idea if he's going to be invading Greenland. That's not something that he campaigned on. So much we don't know yet. But boy, it has been an extraordinarily impactful 30 days.
All right, you talk about domestic pushback. In a way, that's the one way to read what might happen going forward, as we like to say. So if there are any checks on Mr. Trump, where might they be?
Well, we haven't seen any, right? We have a system in the United States of checks and balances. We're supposed to have the Congress and the executive, the presidency, being co-equal branches of government. Donald Trump has not treated Congress as a co-equal branch, and the Republicans who control the House and the Senate have put literally no checks yet on Donald Trump, and that is why he has had so much power domestically. Foreign policy, that always rests within the president's approval and what the president wants to do and the shots he wants to call, be it a Democrat or Republican. But domestically, the Republicans haven't put a check on him yet. The one check we've seen that's worked so far is the market. When Donald Trump said we're not going to allow any small packages coming from China into the U.S. without having to pay duties, without having to have a formal process. And he shut that down. That lasted about 48 hours because businesses went crazy. Customs couldn't process everything that was happening. He pulled that one back right away. So you see the check of the market. Let's see if it still holds. But the Republicans in the Congress, not one yet. And that's why Donald Trump has been so forceful and that his actions have really had impact domestically.
All right, you talk about response to business, response to stock market. Now, this is a leader who has, publicly, explicitly acknowledged that stock markets are his very own personal barometer of approval and his own approval of successes, or a measure for success for Mr. Trump. But in foreign policy, whether it's Ukraine, Middle East, or larger Europe, or come to that China, there is no equivalent of stock markets, is there, as a check on Mr. Trump?
Well, from a foreign policy perspective, if you're talking about Ukraine, no, there is no stock market check really on what is going to happen there. It's certainly the Congress should step in if they think the president is harming the long-term U.S. interest, which one would argue that he would be, but they're not doing that. So the market really, from a foreign policy perspective, is only going to step in the short term on tariffs. And that's why, in part, you haven't seen tariffs yet. You've seen 25% threatened against Canada and Mexico, and then those are put on hold. You've seen threats against the EU, nothing there yet. The 10% on China is there. That's a relatively small number, 10%. China's already had tariffs that were placed on there on the country from Donald Trump in his first term, kept and expanded by Joe Biden in his term, and now Donald Trump is upping them a bit more. So that really hasn't impacted the market. People, I think, saw that coming. If it's a 60% tariff on China, if it's higher, as he campaigned on, then we'll see what the stock market does.
All right, lots of change in just 30 days, and we'll be speaking to you, I'm sure, in the days ahead. Mr. Steven Okun, CEO of APAC Advisors.